Meanwhile, before he even boils over with froth, let's speak to Dr. Roger Givalby, CEO of Fair Money, personal finance and credit expert. Dr. Roger, good morning to you.
Good morning, James.
Let's talk about another nice mess. Now, you sent me a thing that said, here's another nice mess you've gotten us into, Stanley. And I was thinking, what's my dog done? I'm assuming you don't mean Stanley, my dog. It's somebody else.
No. Well, it's a famous line from Laurel and Hardy, if you recall.
I do, but that's
Stanley,
not why.
Stanley, of course, is Boris's father, so I just thought I'd throw that in there and say...
Oh, I see. Well done, you. Yeah. All right, what are you getting excited about?
Well, no sooner does the Jubilee weekend conclude with even more elegance and grace than I personally think the Queen has ever mustered before, then we find ourselves at the absolute other end of the plumbing, James, and a political crisis that you simply couldn't make up. In the midst of a potential new COVID wave, the ever-accelerating cost of living crisis and the never-ending Ukraine war, we find ourselves with the distinct possibility of our soon becoming a leaderless nation, totally leaderless. As Piers Morgan asked the other night here on TalkTV, how can you go forward united for the next general election with a leader that almost half of his party doesn't want? And worse, the Lib Dems, it's understood, may very well soon call for a parliamentary no-confidence vote. And if the 148 anti-Boris Tories vote against him again, as they did in their own Conservatives' no-confidence vote, together with all the others in Parliament who are likewise disposed, he could be removed as Prime Minister. In the extreme, he could also be found guilty of serious enough crimes to be barred from Parliament. So if either of these events happened, and they could happen very soon, do we see an obvious leader to step in? I don't.
Well, I don't see an obvious leader. I just wish that we could just get on, move on, and just deal with the problems. So this is why I'm talking about fuel. I know you want to talk about that in a moment. However, as time marches on, Roger, let's talk about some good news from America.
Yeah, there is some very good news from America. The Bank of America has just come out with a report saying that they're finding investor behavior very puzzling. Investors are not battening down the hatches and building defensive investment portfolios. In fact, they're still buying tech stocks despite the huge tech fall and all the predictions of a dire summer ahead for tech, rather than defensive stocks like healthcare and financials and things like that. Everyday investors have simply not positioned their portfolios for an economic downturn. So although Morgan Stanley, your fave, is now saying
fave? I used to work there.
Yeah, but every time I say Morgan Stanley
said
something, you go, yeah, they're right.
Well, not always, actually. I have to say
not always, of course.
Not always. Look, everybody who predicts the future generally gets it wrong most of the time.
Well, there's consistency, you see.
Exactly.
So even though Morgan Stanley say that Apple and Microsoft and others are going to dive this summer, many U.S. investors and institutions are nevertheless predicting that now there is not going to be a recession, and the Fed, with everything they're doing, the Federal Reserve, is not going to be able to push the states into a recession. So it's very bright news, which will obviously float over to these shores very soon, I hope.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, let's just talk a little bit about your views about what you describe as a petrol bomb. We've been discussing petrol prices this morning. I dare say there's going to be some more of it in a moment as well. But what do you make of it?
Well, I heard, and I agree with pretty much everything that people have said, but I think there's another perspective here. I think the biggest problem, and it doesn't get mentioned enough, is that the instability of our political situation, the crisis that we're in right now, and everything else that has caused the pound to become so weak has it's a perfect storm. It's hit the petrol price at the same time that the crude oil price, which is, of course, denominated in dollars, has gone up to an unbelievable $135 a barrel. At the beginning of the pandemic, as you know, it was actually minus $38 a barrel. It was negative. So we've got a falling pound and a rising oil price, and that is simply a huge factor in the 2 pounds that some people up north in Gateshead are now charging for.
Yeah, but this is also exacerbated by the fact that the government don't want to admit how much tax they are charging in every single litre of fuel, and they need to act, in my view, right now. This is a crisis right now, and 5p won't wash. You know, it's just like, oh, well done, Rishi Sunak, 5p. It's like, no, have a look, suspend the VAT temporarily until this has passed. If you do that, if you reduce inflation quickly and immediately, you take it systemically out of the system, number one. You strengthen the pound in terms of stability. You move the economy forward because people aren't so worried about having less money in their pockets, and it fixes a whole range of things, doesn't it? Am I right?
I mean, totally. I didn't say that the weakness in the dollar is an excuse for the government. I think the weakness in the dollar, together with the war in Ukraine, the general cost of living crisis, the 6 different factors which are particular to the UK about why fuel prices have risen, all of these things are reasons why the government should stop having these insane committee meetings and publishing these papers and take one giant swipe at this.
There we go, Roger. The frothing has to stop. We've run out of time, but it's wonderful as ever to speak to you. That's Dr. Roger Giebel, CEO of Fair Money, personal finance and credit expert. Right, next.